All right, well, welcome everyone. We have 54 people joining us today. We're so delighted to have you all. This is the first ever virtual Lunch and Learn for the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at the University of Utah, and we are delighted to have you all with us today. Our lecture will be taking questions through the Q&A since we can't see all the screens. So down at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A bubble, and there's also a chat bubble. So if you send a Q&A, Alan will answer that either in progress or at the end of the talk. And only Alan or I will be able to see that. If you send a chat, if you have comments you want to share with the rest of the group, if you send it in the chat, everyone will be able to see it. So that is our Zoom housekeeping. Welcome to Light Pollution and the Dark Skies effort with Alan Eastman. I'd like to just briefly introduce him. Alan holds a PhD in chemistry from the University of Utah. He worked for nearly 30 years in the research laboratory of a major petroleum and petrochemical company. In the course of his career, he spent a number of years doing marketing research in the area of petrochemicals and plastics. And he's taught a number of Osher courses in scientific areas, including energy, water issues, climate change, air pollution, and even music theory. This fall, Alan will be teaching America's Energy. It Takes More Than Love to Make the World Go Round. And that class will start on October 15th. And for winter term, Alan will be teaching Plastics, Boon, or Bane. Both of these sound like fantastic courses, but today we will hear from Alan about light pollution and dark skies. Please welcome Alan Eastman, and thank you so much for joining us today, Alan.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry I can't see you. One of the great rewards of teaching, of course, is interaction with the students. So if I do something wrong, say something egregious, or if you have a question about something, please don't hesitate. How many of you, we have a full moon right now. How many of you got out and looked at the Milky Way last night? My guess is probably very few of you. And even if you looked up in the sky to see it, you did not see the Milky Way. There's a reason for that. Okay, come on, let's, okay, just a minute. My screen share is not sharing. So let's, oh, there we go. Okay, the reason for that is most people can't see the Milky Way. 80% of Americans can't see the Milky Way at night from where they live, including me and probably including you if you live in the Salt Lake Valley. 99% of the populations of Europe and the United States are affected by light pollution. That's a pretty awful figure. I mean, we know about air pollution, we know about water pollution. Light pollution isn't something we usually think about. But the whole dark skies movement and the International Dark Skies Association try to limit light pollution. And that's what we're going to talk about today is what is light pollution, why does it matter anyway, and what can be done about it. It's getting worse. Here's what the United States looked like from a satellite view in the late 1950s. This is very early satellite. The resolution isn't very good, but you can see the big metropolitan areas along the East Coast, Southern Florida, California, here's Denver, here's us. You can basically see where the light is. By the mid-70s, virtually the whole eastern part of the United States had gotten pretty bright. And you can see expansion in the West. 1997 looks like this. Here's what it's predicted to look like by 2025. Basically, nowhere can you go where there isn't a lot of light at night, except look right here. How about this? This is, guess what, Southern Utah. Here's, these two spots are out in Nevada. So if you really want to see the stars at night, it's easy to tell where to go. Let me show an example of what the skies look like right now and what they looked like before air pollution. In 2003, there was a big blackout in New England for a couple of days. This is what a typical street looked like at that time. Here's your street light, houses on. You can see there's a lot of light in the sky. You can see a couple of stars here and there, but not much else. Somebody went out with their camera and took a picture during the blackout. Here's what it looks like. There's the Milky Way. And you can see the little bit of stars that were shown with the city lights on, all of a sudden show up, and you get a whole different view. So this is what we've gotten used to. The picture on the left is what we've gotten used to. And sometimes we forget that people evolved under a sky like this. And so the whole problem with light pollution is that it is something unnatural. So what is light pollution? Well, it's the inappropriate or excessive use of artificial light. That's simple as we can get it. Let me give some examples. Glare. If you have so much brightness that you can't see much, you've experienced glare. We usually run into that almost literally driving on the highway with bright lights from other cars. But you can see it basically in places where you live as well. Sometimes there's so much brightness, it just makes your pupils constrict in the dark and you can't see anything. Okay, here we go. Next one. I should have made these come up faster. Sky glow is what happens when the sky gets brighter over inhabited areas. All that light that shows up in town, much of it is directed up, straight up into the air, and that hits dust particles and so on in the atmosphere, scatters, and you get a brighter sky above inhabited areas. I should not move my mouse because it doesn't cooperate very well here. There we go. Okay. Light trespass is very simple. It's light falling where it doesn't need it, where you don't need it, or it's not intended. In the complex where I live, we used to have really bright lights out in the areas in between the houses, and you'd get an awful lot of light in your bedroom window. Well, what we wanted was to light up the paths in the area between the houses, but not light up people's bedroom windows. That's a perfect example of light trespass. I see a question right there, so I'll talk about that in just a second. Light clutter, and we've all seen that, is if you drive past a shopping area, a shopping center, there is all kinds of light, every store owner trying to be brighter and more attention getting than anybody else. So these are all examples of artificial light pollution. Question reads, the street lights on our block, I was outvoted, it says, shine light in all directions, into the sky and into our home. I contacted the office of the mayor to inquire as to what the city might do and was advised the street lights are privately owned, so it was mine to do. Any thoughts? We'll talk about that a little more as we go along. That said, let's go along. I should have made these show up faster. Unfortunately, light pollution is a side effect of our industrial civilization. We have, over the years, figured out that we like it really bright at night and put in bright lights everywhere. Unfortunately, that's visual evidence of wasted energy. If you have light shine in places where you don't want it or need it, the energy that you use to generate that light is just wasted. It's inefficient, and it goes into the sky instead of lighting up the things that need to be lit up. But the good part of all of this is that light pollution is the only pollution problem that can be solved by flipping a switch. Those lights have on and off switches. Do we really want it absolutely black at night? Probably not, but we don't want it as bright as it is. Let's talk about a little bit more about understanding how light pollution works. We have here light trespass, light where it's unwanted, glare or it interferes with vision. Let's look at a typical street light. I think you can see my pointer circling the street light here. Some of this light goes directly up into the sky. It gets reflected back due to clouds. Some of it is in the glare zone where it's just so bright it bothers your eyesight. Some of it is light trespass that goes where you don't want it. And then finally you have this smaller area that's the area to be lit. Everything outside this central brighter yellow zone is wasted energy, wasted light, and as we'll see in just a minute, it can cause some real problems. We can actually measure, you know, I'm a scientist, you've got to have a number or something doesn't exist almost. You can actually measure how much light pollution exists fairly readily. There's a fellow named Bortles who put together a scale of how bright things are, with 1 being the darkest. So 1 is essentially prehistoric times when there was virtually no man-made light. 2 on the Bortles scale is a dark sky site where you can really see very, very well. Out in the country away from the cities is usually about a 3. In that transition between urban and rural, it's 4. In the suburbs, where most of us live, we can see some stars in the sky, but not the Milky Way, and really you only see the brightest stars. Notice here you see some of these, but a lot of the smaller ones just disappear. Bright suburban sky, you can see very few stars. In the city-suburb transition, not only do you not see any stars, but the sky itself is getting lighter. And finally, in the inner city night sky, you can hardly see any stars at all. And the sky itself is bright rather than dark. So there are some gradations in there. There are also instruments that can be used to measure how dark the sky is. I have one in my hand here. This is called a sky quality meter. Basically, there's a button right here you can push, and in 10 seconds, it gives you a measurement that tells you what magnitude star you can see. As you know, astronomers rate star brightness, a first magnitude star being the brightest. And then as you go down in magnitude, the sky gets, or the stars get dimmer and dimmer, till something like a 21st magnitude star can only be seen in a dark sky area. In something like this, you can only see a first magnitude star. This sky quality meter tells you what magnitude star you can actually see where you're looking at it. I'll come back to this in a few minutes. So why is light pollution a problem? What kind of problems, you know, why is it a bother? I mean, isn't a lot of light at night really good so you can see better? Well, there are some problems. First one that everybody's always worried about their finances. You increase the energy consumption. We're trying in our nation to decrease our energy consumption. If you have light that shines where you don't need it, you've basically wasted the energy you pay to make that light shine. One that is more subtle, but certainly of some import, is that it disrupts the ecosystem and wildlife. It also harms human health. We'll talk about how that not only does it ruin sleep if it's too bright for a lot of people, there are some other deleterious effects to our physiology that you need to know about. And believe it or not, too much light is not a solution to crime and car accidents. Sometimes too much light helps promote certain kinds of cars and automobile accidents and some types of crime. I remember when I was in college, I took a couple of years off and went on an LDS mission to France for a couple of years. And in France, I discovered that the headlights of all the lights of all the cars were yellow. And I thought, this is really strange because you can't see as well with those yellow headlights. I had a chance to drive a little bit in France, and I discovered in the city it didn't matter, because the yellow headlights lit up everything you wanted to look at anyway. But there was one thing that they did that I hadn't expected that turned out to be an unanticipated benefit. With the yellow headlights, you could see traffic coming in from the sides of side streets, and you could see better than with the bright white lights what was happening on the sides of the road. So those yellow headlights actually made driving safer than the somewhat brighter white ones did. When they started the European Union, France had to go to white headlights like everybody else. So if you go to Paris now, everybody drives in white headlights, just like here. But I've always felt bad that we insist on the white headlights here rather than moving to some that, from my experience, worked a lot better than what we've got. Let's talk about wasting energy a little bit. What's light pollution costing us? Well, nearly 15% of residential energy use in the United States is for outdoor lighting. This isn't industrial use, this is just residential use for outdoor lighting. It wastes about half a kilowatt hour of energy per house per night. That's enough energy to run your TV for an hour. So that much is just wasted. Where does it go? Well, it goes into sky glow, caused by light pollution. About 35% of it doesn't go where you want it. That's about $3 billion a year of energy cost that is just wasted, which is about $10 for every man, woman, and child in the United States every year. There are some other problems associated with that. About 15 million tons of carbon dioxide are emitted every year in order to power that lighting. About 35% of that, about 4 million tons, is unnecessary. About 3 million passenger cars have the same CO2 emission rate. So basically, if we could eliminate that unneeded light, we would save about 40,000 tons per day of carbon dioxide. I think some of you may have taken my climate change class. That's a lot of carbon dioxide, and it would have a difference. You'd have to plant about 600 million trees in order to take that much carbon dioxide out of the air. And frankly, I don't think we have enough land area in the United States to plant 600 million trees. It's a real problem. Some other problems. 2/3 of all songbirds migrate at night, but about 1 billion birds every year die in North America due to colliding with buildings. Most of that happens at night, and mostly because the buildings are lit up. It turns out that one of the groups that is most concerned about light pollution is the Audubon Society. The statistics say that approximately we are down approximately 30% of the bird population in the world over the last 25 years. Much of that due to, at least some of it due to birds who either get lost because they can't steer by the stars and the moon like they used to because of light pollution, or who run into buildings in the night. There is a famous picture that, unfortunately, I couldn't find, or I would have put it in here, that a couple of years ago, Toronto, the city of Toronto, Audubon Society, took and collected all of the birds that hit the buildings in downtown Toronto in one night. And it was like 10,000 birds in one night hitting the buildings in Toronto because it's on a major flight path. They fly into buildings and die. What about other wildlife? Well, one famous case, sea turtles. It turns out that when turtles hatch, they use the reflection of moonlight on the ocean to figure out where the ocean is. And so they crawl from their hatching sites on the beach to the ocean. If nearby cities have lights lit up that shine onto the beach, a good chunk of those turtles head for the city instead of for the ocean, making them more susceptible to predators, or they just flat run out of energy and die. Sea turtles aren't the only things. Let's look at some disruptions to all different kinds of wildlife. Let's start with mammals because people usually like those best. It turns out that mammals like their privacy when reproducing, just like people do. And there is a proven decline in reproduction rate if the sky is too bright. In addition, many mammals find it difficult to forage when there is light pollution because some of their prey decides it's not dark enough to come out. And so the amount of prey disappears. It's also more difficult for some of the mammals to get out and find their prey because the prey stay home rather than getting out. Let's see. Here we go. Oh, come on. Oh, I don't know why this is being difficult. It also exposes mammals that are out to some predators. You can see that this coin has both sides. It's difficult for mammals to forage because when they're predators, they can't find their prey, and when they're prey, their predators can find them more easily. That leads to increased mortality and basically upsets the balance that has come after millions of years of evolutionary change. Amphibians have the same kinds of problems. They find it very difficult to reproduce. Foraging is a problem. It messes up the natural protective instincts. And I mentioned the turtles with lighted buildings mimic moon on the ocean. They're wonderful for renting for vacations, not so great for the turtles. Birds are drawn to the light beams. They collide with lighted towers. Even worse, it confuses migrating birds, and they keep flying around the buildings trying to find which direction to go until they just fall from exhaustion. They basically won't fly back into the dark because they use stars. Many birds use stars and the moon to migrate. Some do use magnetic fields. That's not affected by light, but many use magnetic fields as well as light to migrate. Reptiles don't eat as well in the light. They're more vulnerable to predators. Something on the order of, we all know that bees have decreased greatly in number over the last 15 or 20 years. Insects have also. Insects in general, all types of insects, not just bees. They're attracted to the light. We all know that, moths like to fly around light bulbs. They spend too much energy flying around the lights and basically exhaust themselves and die. Also, they become easier prey for bats because they congregate around the lights. This impacts all the species who rely on insects for food and pollination. Anyway, wildlife has been shown by a number of studies to be really adversely affected by too much light. Now let's talk, we talked about birds and reptiles and amphibians and mammals in general. Let's talk about people. Too much light pollution, or light pollution in general, interferes with melatonin production. And melatonin turns out to regulate the daily cycle of activities, or sleep cycle, among other things. Glare reduces contrast sensitivity and color perception and makes it more difficult for us to drive, makes it more difficult for us to see threats and dangers in otherwise dark places. Disrupts the normal sleep cycle and increases the risk of obesity, depression, sleep disorders, diabetes, and cancers. Is it a direct cause? That's not quite known yet, to be honest, but there is a strong correlation between light pollution and a number of these things. It's also known that blue light is the worst. As a scientist who worked in light for a long time, Blue has a higher energy content. It's a higher energy light than the yellow end of the spectrum. And it's not surprising that that should have the most effects. It's known that, you know, you want to get off your computer and have your kids get off their phones a couple hours before they go to bed, because blue keeps that melatonin from forming that promotes the normal sleep cycle. Lots of LEDs are blue. Basically, too much light when we were expecting the dark is harmful to people. So here's a kind of a summary of all of the nasty effects. I won't go through that, but I will give you my email at the end of this. And if any of you would like a copy of these slides, I would be delighted to send them to you. One thing that always comes up when you talk about light pollution is, well, I need lots and lots of light around my property for security. But I want you to look at these two pictures. This is the same picture with and without the light glare from this, quote, security light. Under which light can you see best a possible danger? This one you can barely see the guy hiding over there. This one is quite clear. Light pollution can actually increase your danger. You want this area lit up, but you don't want the glare in your eye. So what you want to do is have this light shine on the path and not where you don't need it. So increased light is good, but only if it's in the right place. If it shines where it's not needed, that can actually decrease your safety. So where are the problems with light pollution? Well, here's another picture of the world at night from a satellite. This one's a composite, obviously. And where the most people are is where there's the most light and where there are the greatest problems. No big surprise. Again, this is a fairly recent picture of the United States. The brighter the background up to white, the higher the light intensity. And you can see there's a portion of southeastern Utah, parts of Nevada, that's Las Vegas, or this is Las Vegas, by the way. Here's Salt Lake, parts of Nevada. These are really good dark spots. Incidentally, you can see pretty well. Here's the Salt Lake metropolitan area up to Park City. You can see here's I-15. There's Las Vegas. Here's, excuse me, that's St. George. Here's Las Vegas, Phoenix, Tucson. You can see where the cities are quite readily, but you can also see that we have the very good fortune of being close to some really dark places, which is good. How can we deal with it? Well, protecting the night sky is something that each one of us can do something about, both as individuals and as members of communities and, you know, and as voters. The rules are pretty simple. Light only what you need. If you don't need it, don't put light on it. Use energy efficient bulbs and make them only as bright as you need. Shield lights and direct them down. By shielding, we mean that nothing of the light bulb shows below the shield. So if light is directed down, it will shine on what we need to find the light on, usually on the ground. Use timers, only use light when you need it. Choose warm white bulbs instead of the blue ones. And finally, the International Dark Sky Association is the organization that is helping and has decreasing light pollution as its main goal. So let's talk about some of these things. Here's some good lighting concepts to know. Shielding. This light, this is a typical street light. You can see the bulb hangs down here. You have light going up in all directions. But what you really want to shine your light on is the stuff down here around the base of the light. So shielding directs light where you want it to go. Color temperature takes it from blue light to something that's a little easier on the eyes. Intensity, how much light really actually shines on it in terms of photons, and timing. So these are the things that we worry about in getting light fixtures that do the job that we need them to do, but don't throw light where it isn't needed. Shielding, color, temperature, intensity, and timing. Pretty obviously what shielding is, what intensity is, what timing is. What in the heck is color temperature? Well, that comes from a scientific thing called the black body radiation. And black body radiation is pretty simple. If you take a bar of iron and you heat it up, first it's red hot, and then it's white hot. We all know those are kind of things that we usually say, but that's a real phenomenon. As you heat a black object up, it shines, radiates light of different color at different temperatures. And so you can refer to the color of the light by the temperature. Daylight is around 4,000. Well, daylight can get really, really blue. Typically, a daylight white lamp is in this 4,200 K range. What's a K? Well, Kelvin, K stands for Kelvin, and that is a measure. That is a type of a measure of light. 1 degree Kelvin, 1 Kelvin, Kelvin does not have degrees, it's just kelvins. But 1 Kelvin is the same size as 1 degree centigrade. And 0 Kelvin is absolute zero. So 0 centigrade is 273 Kelvin. When you get into the thousands, it doesn't make any difference. But just assume that a Kelvin is degrees centigrade. So something that's about 2000 Kelvin is about the intensity and color of candlelight. Blue light is hotter and hotter and hotter. Typically lights that you buy at the store, fluorescent lights will be about 4,000 K. Some LEDs will be up in the 5,000 or 6,000 K range. Incandescent light, the kind of warm white light, is about 3,000 K or lower. And basically what Dark Skies recommends for most light is in that 3,000 K or lower range. You can see here's an illustration of what the different types of light look like. 10,000 K, 9,000, 8,000, 7, 6, 5, and so on. So basically the lower the color temperature, the yellower and the warmer the light. Now here's some light fixtures that don't work. Part of solving the light pollution problem for any particular area is changing the fixtures. So unshielded floodlights are not good. These little wall packs that go on the walls just throw light everywhere. Unshielded bollards like that are not good. Here's your typical unshielded street light. These louvered style fixtures can throw light all over. We see there are a lot of these in Salt Lake. They put light everywhere. Unshielded floodlights are not good. So here's what you want to do instead for acceptable lights. You want what's called full cutout fixtures, where there is a shield all the way around at the level of the bulb, or the bulb is slightly recessed. That way the light, let me back up a little bit, the light shines straight down or down and then out a little bit so it covers what you want. So these are typical things. We have a question from Tay Haynes. Said Salt Lake is changing to LED street lights, objecting doesn't do any good. Whether that's a good thing or not depends on the color of the LEDs they're putting in. Cities like LEDs because they take a lot less energy than the old incandescent ones. If they put in LEDs at 3000 K or 3000 K color temperature, that's great. If they're 5,000 or 6,000 K, then you have a lot of blue light that is not. The best suggestions there are to go to the, again, politics is people acting in concert. So the best solution for that is to go to the city. International Dark Skies can supply some information and some documentation that's very useful. The best solution there is to go to the city and say, look, LEDs are a good thing because they cut down on power, but while you're putting it in, can you change your light fixtures so that they shine down? And by the way, let's use LEDs of a lower color temperature so that we, A, get the light where we want it to be, and B, have the light of a color temperature that is not as dangerous as the higher stuff. Which brings up IDA. International Dark Sky Association was founded in 1988 to combat light pollution. One of the things, excuse me a sec. One of the things that it does is it accredits dark sky parks and cities and so on. What's a dark sky places in general? Well, what's a dark sky place? Well, it's a place that's certifiably dark. And I mean by certifiable, you can go out with these little light meters and measure exactly how dark it is. There's some good things about dark sky places. First, it's a place where people can go and see what the dark sky really looks like and see what they're missing by living in town. The very certification of an area helps protect not just the park itself, but everywhere around it. And because of that, people get the idea of, gee, this is pretty nice. You can have dark skies without decreasing safety. You can have dark skies without making the place look like, you know, dark as inside of a cow. It furnishes examples of what can be done. There are parks, communities, reserves, various types of dark sky places. A dark sky park might be something like Arches National Park, which happens to be a dark sky place. You can have a dark sky community that is a community that has changed its lighting to dark sky compatible things. And some of those people use dark skies as a help to their tourism. For example, trying to think of the name of the town. The town that's right at the input to Zion National Park is now a dark sky community. East Canyon State Park was just certified recently as an international dark sky place. That's within easy reach of everybody in Salt Lake. That dark sky sanctuary is one of the darkest places. So there are some of those in the world. Some of those are in third world countries. But development of distinction is an urban area that is working towards to help their part of town become a certifiable dark sky area. Springdale is the dark sky community. That's one I was trying to think of. The area in which I live is a development called Park Place. We're trying to change out all our public lighting to meet dark sky certification and try and become the first development of distinction in Utah, and like the second or third in the world of getting that. There are well over 100 dark sky places worldwide. There's a whole swath of them running down from Canada to Mexico along the Rockies called the Great Western Starry Way. Darksky.org has a current list. Let me show you some. Here are dark sky places in the United States and southern Canada. Interesting that so many of them are clustered right here. It turns out that Utah is the #1 Utah has more official dark sky places than any other state in the union, and really than any other governmental jurisdiction in the world. So you're in the right place for dark skies. If you remember back a number of slides, you can see why. There's that big dark area, guess what, right here in southeastern Utah. And we have taken advantage of that to build opportunities for dark sky tourism. This one out here is one that's being worked on. This is in one of the Indian reservations. Wonderful, wonderful dark place out there. And they're discovering that they can get people to come out and provide tourism and opportunities for their youth to take people on dark sky tours and see the things out, to see the dark sky out there and see some of the other things that the tribe has to offer. It allows them a way to find jobs for their youth so that they can stay home and not have to move to the city. It's a real opportunity for a lot of these communities out in rural areas to find people who come with, it's wonderful tourism. If you have a dark sky tour, you have to get a motel and stay overnight. You can't just drive into town for 3 hours and leave. It's a great opportunity for people to show off their communities and what they have in those rural areas and increase the economy without degrading their environment. You don't have to dig up the earth to do mining. You don't have to drill holes in it to do petroleum production. You don't end up with refuse piles. You don't end up with slag. You don't end up with nuclear waste. It's just pure tourism. People come to look and stay overnight and eat in the local restaurants. It's a wonderful type of tourism to encourage. Here's a list, and I'm not sure it's complete, of the dark sky places in Utah. I'm going to leave this up for a second while we look at some of them. Let's look at the latest is East Canyon State Park, which was just named a dark sky park in the last 2 weeks. The town of Helper, the Mighty Five national parks are all either certified dark sky places or Zion is working on it. There are a number of towns, Springdale, Ivins, Kanab. Bears Ears National Monument is working on it. Rainbow Bridge National Monument is a dark sky sanctuary. Now what that means is that it is darker than most dark sky parks and virtually untouched. And there is very little encroachment on the skyscape from around them. There's just not much that's very bright around there. You saw maybe on the first slide that I'm a part of the dark sky field team. What the dark sky, it's fancier than it sounds. It sounds fancier than it really is, believe me. The dark sky field team is my wife and I and some friends who've gone out to help measure exactly how dark the sky is in some of these places. And we together with the National Park Service people in those places are working to have a whole sweep of dark sky places from Hovenweet National Monument to Mesa Verde with Canyons of the Ancients National Monument in between. Those two national monuments and Mesa Verde National Park are basically in a row of about 70 or 75 miles that we're trying to get we need to get Canyons of the Ancients certified as a dark sky place. And then we'll have a sweep of about 70 by 50 miles that is all a dark sky area that would join all of these others. You can see why Utah is basically ground zero for dark sky places really in the world. We live in a wonderful place. Let's see if I can get this. Here we go. How does IDA credit dark sky places? Well, two things. Basically, you take a light pollution measurement. How bright is it? And so with little sky quality meters like this one I held up from Indigo, You go at night and measure how dark it really is where people go. Oh, Vicki and I have been down, for example, in Zion, darkest place I have ever personally been outside of a cave is down at the end of the Zion Canyon in the area called the Temple of Sinawava. And I can't even tell you how dark that was. Wonderful. You go at new moon when the sky is as dark as it gets during the month. You renew it every couple of years to track the changes. You consider how unique each place is. You look how much the park, for example, is doing to help the public understand what a resource the dark skies are. And they hold star parties and all kinds of things. There's a heavy dependence on volunteers to do this. This is one thing that a lot of people can do that will help out. Let's see, we've got another question here. What do the asterisks mean? Okay, the asterisks on that last slide meant that those are still in progress. So we're still working on those. Notice one thing I left off of here was the lighting inventory. The lighting inventory, basically, if you have an area that you think would qualify as a dark sky place, one thing that the IDA is trying to do is to make sure that dark sky places are models of what dark sky compatible lighting should be. So in order to become a dark sky place, the park or neighborhood or whatever needs to have at least 80% of its lighting fixtures as IDA compatible. That means that you have to know what you've got. So one step and one difficult step in dark sky accreditation is going through and looking at every single light fixture that shines outside in that dark sky place. Lighting inventories can be pretty simple. When we were down looking at the original area of Bears Ears before the recent changes, the original area of Bears Ears had exactly one light bulb out that shined in an area at night. That was an easy inventory. On the other hand, the Grand Canyon National Park is now a dark sky accredited place, and they had something on the order of 5,000 light fixtures that they had to deal with in their lighting inventory. So doing the inventory is one of the first steps and one of the hardest in getting dark sky places accredited. And that's one thing that volunteers can do and have done, as well as participating in the dark sky activities and the public outreach. And so anyway, there is a procedure to go through that the International Dark Sky Association has set out, that if any of you are interested, I'd be glad to go through that with you or send you information as needed. Basically, there's time now for answering questions. I've gone through what is light pollution, why is it a problem, and then some of the things that we can do about it that involve changing our lighting to make lighting light what we need, not what we don't need, to have an appropriate color temperature, and to be lit only when we need it, where we need it, what color temperature we need. I've got some references here. If you've got the opportunity, I'm going to leave this on while I answer any questions you might have, so that you can write down any you'd like. International Dark Sky Organization is just darksky.org. That's pretty easy. There is a Utah chapter of International Dark Sky Association. That website is IDA Utah Dark Sky. As you might suspect, given the effects of light pollution on birds, Tracy Aviary has been quite involved in helping combat light pollution in the Salt Lake area. They have a program called Lights Out Salt Lake that encourages people to turn their lights out, especially during the migration season. Their blog is really excellent. I can't I can't praise the aviary enough for what they've done. And to be honest, I stole some of these slides from some of their people, with their permission, of course, but they've been really good. There is an organization, there's a website called darkskydefenders.org that talks about how Utah is leading the way in dark skies. There is a consortium for dark sky studies at the University of Utah. It turns out that the University of Utah is the first university in the world to offer a minor in dark sky studies. And then finally, there is a wonderful website called Protecting Dark Skies in Utah that has amazing information. This one is a long one, nasty one to write down, but if anybody wants that, I would be glad to send it to you. Let me give you my email address. It is aeastmanslc@gmail. That's Alan Eastman, Salt Lake City. aeastmanslc@gmail.com. I would be glad to send anyone who wants either a copy of this entire presentation or just this last little, these websites that would be useful. Finally, I really appreciate your interest. I hope I've helped you all see the dark. We talk a lot about seeing the light, but there's a lot to be said for seeing the dark. So if any of you have questions, I see the board is lighting up. Carolyn Updike asks, are there a lot fewer places where large sky telescopes can be stationed? Yes, you can think of some of the places where telescopes have done very well in the past, like Mount Palomar in California. There's an awful lot of light pollution from the LA basin that is preventing them from doing the kind of astronomy they would like to do. Gloria, I would like my town to replace streetlights and implement more dark sky initiatives locally. What's the best way to go about that? Okay, the best way to go about that is to get some materials and some help from the IDA Utah chapter, idautah@darksky.org. They can help you, actually they can give information and some materials on how to approach your city council with ideas on doing that. Many city councils are worried that if the light's not bright enough, we're going to have an increase in crime. As you've seen, that's not necessarily true. And there's some information both on the dark sky, on the IDA website, and that the Utah chapter has, that can help you go to your city council with information to help them understand why dark sky, helping increase helping cut down light pollution is a good deal for the city. A lot of cities are going to LED lighting because it's much cheaper to run than the other kinds. And this is, when they do that, it's an excellent time to go to them and say, okay, if you've got to have LEDs, let's make sure that the color temperature is acceptable. We can still see all we need to see, and we can cut down on light pollution at the same time. Interestingly, the city of Tucson, Arizona, where the headquarters of the IDA are, has implemented an awful lot of dark sky compliant lighting. It's very interesting to go to Tucson and drive around there in the dark. You can see everything you need to see, but you can look up and still see the sky. So if you have a friend in Tucson, give them a call and see what they have to say. More questions. Can you type your email in chat? Okay.
I took care of that for you, Alan. I think we have just time for one more last question, which is Margaret's about Corinne, Utah. Do you see that one?
Okay, I see one from, do I ever speak at City Council on the subject? I'd be glad to. Next question, Margaret Ferry, would you consider Corinne as a possible dark sky area? Yes, indeed. You would need to talk to the Procter & Gamble plant and the Walmart distribution center up there about changing their lighting scheme to dark sky compliant. But Corinne would be a wonderful addition as a dark sky community. Let me repeat my email address slowly. It is AEASTMAN Eastman SLC @gmail.
And I put that in the chat as well, Alan. We had 2 questions in the chat. 2 people wanted to know the name of that reservation with the dark sky tours.
It is the one of the Paiute groups, the ones out at Ibapa. That is still in progress. It's not yet an official dark sky community, but the tribe is looking towards that as a real way to get some a type of tourism that would not impinge on their tribal sovereignty and their tribal traditions.
So would that information be available on any of the darksky.org?
The list of dark sky locations, and in fact, the slides that I put up there on the locations came off the International Dark Sky website. So darksky.org will have lots and lots and lots of information.
Okay, and will that include the name of the tribe and how to get on that tour? I think people are wanting to go.
I think we better, it's not set up yet, so please don't go out there quite yet. I believe the Hopis down close to Grand Canyon are doing some of that dark sky tourism. I don't have an email to give you on that one, but if you look up Hopi dark sky in Grand Canyon, if you Google that, I'm pretty sure you'll find it.
Okay, well, Osher members are determined. I'm sure they will. Thank you so much, Alan. It's great looking at the names of the participants. It's all the usual people who come to Lunch and Learn. So thanks to everyone who attended. And since we can't have applause,
well, thank you for coming.
I will applaud for everyone.
I feel really honored to be the first one to give this a try.
I think it was totally perfect, and I'm seeing applauses come into the chat as well. All right, thank you so much, Alan. We will let you go and see you in one of your Osher classes.
Sounds good to me. I'll skip the commercial on that, but.
Well, I gave it at the beginning, so.
Yeah.
Thanks
okay,
for
well, thank
attending,
you.
everybody.
Have a great day.
All righty, you too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.